Okay, let me start with a question. What was the last podcast episode that truly moved you, that made you sit in your car after arriving at your destination just to finish listening? I'm willing to bet it wasn't packed with bullet points and data, and I am a researcher by trade, so I love data and I love bullet points. But I'm willing to bet that's not what hooked you. Welcome to Fearless Podcasting Academy. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Dean. I've always lived in two worlds, one filled with the magic of storytelling and language, and the other wired with technology and innovation. And through the years of research and teaching and hands-on experience, I've been obsessed with one question: what makes a message truly resonate? And that's why I created the Fearless Podcasting Academy, where creators and entrepreneurs and change makers come to ditch self-doubt, amplify their voices, and build podcasts that demand attention. So whether you're launching your first episode or leveling up your platform, you're in the right place. Because when you learn to use your voice with confidence, you don't just start a podcast, you start a movement. This is Fearless Podcasting Academy. So 2 weeks ago in our last solo episode, we uncovered your unique perspective. That's that irreplaceable lens that only you possess. So today we're turning that perspective into narratives that keep listeners coming back episode after episode. So by the end of our time together today, you're going to have a powerful storytelling framework that creates genuine emotional connection, strategies for structuring compelling narratives, and an ability to find stories within your expertise that audiences will crave, even if you don't consider yourself a natural storyteller. Because here's what I know for sure: your expertise might attract listeners, but it's your stories that will make them stay. I feel like I say this in every episode, but it is the truth. It is your stories that will make them stay. So let's unlock that storyteller within you. Let me start with a question. What was the last podcast episode that truly moved you, that made you sit in your car after arriving at your destination just to finish listening? I'm willing to bet it wasn't packed with bullet points and data, and I am a researcher by trade, so I love data and I love bullet points. But I'm willing to bet that's not what hooked you. It was the story around that data that transported you, that made you feel something. Well, there's neuroscience behind this. So when we're presented with facts and figures, our brains activate two regions. One's called the Broca's and one is called the Wernicke area. That is where we process language. So when we hear a story, our brains light up as if we're experiencing the events ourselves. That sensory cortex or that motor cortex, even our olfactory, the part that we can smell stuff, can activate during a well-told story. That is why you can forget a statistic minutes after hearing it, but you will remember a story for years. So I did learn this lesson the hard way. When I first started my podcast about leadership, I packed episodes with research and frameworks and expert advice, and the feedback was, well, that was informative, but forgettable, or kiss of death, boring. Everything changed when I started weaving stories through those same concepts. This is what I call the story advantage, the ability to transform expertise into experience through narrative. It's not just a nice to have for your podcast. It is essential if you want your message to stick and to spread. Because the truth is, and I keep saying this a lot, but let me put some truths in here for you. In an information abundant world, like we have Google in our pockets, we can look up anything, right? Facts are commodities. Anyone can Google statistics, but your stories, the ones that illuminate your unique perspective, remember we talked about that? Those are irreplaceable. They are the bridge that connects your knowledge to your listener's heart. Okay. Let's get tactical with 3 storytelling frameworks that you can use immediately in your next episode. The first one is what I call the transformational triangle. And this simple structure has powered everything from ancient myths to modern TED Talks. It has 3 points. Number 1, the struggle. Start with a specific challenge or tension. Number 2, the shift. I want you to reveal the turning point or realization. And number 3, the new reality. Show what's different as a result. So let me demonstrate with a quick story. I once worked with a client, we're going to call him James. James is his name today, who was launching a podcast about mindfulness for entrepreneurs. He had meditation credentials and business experience, but his episodes felt flat. During our session, I asked him about his personal connection to mindfulness, and his eyes immediately filled with tears. 5 years earlier, his startup had imploded along with his health and his marriage. His doctor handed him a prescription and a business card for a meditation center saying, take these pills if you want, but this card might actually save your life. This meditation center became his lifeline. The practice not only restored his health, but transformed how he built his next business. one that would eventually sell for 8 figures. Okay, so did you notice the transformation triangle there? The struggle, business and personal life collapsed. The shift, which was reluctantly trying meditation, and his new reality, renewed success with different principles. So when James started sharing his story in his podcast intro, listener engagement tripled. People weren't just learning about mindfulness techniques. They were investing in his journey. He put his heart into it. They could emotionally connect with him, right? Okay, so the second framework is the curiosity loop. Our brains are hardwired to seek completion, to resolve open questions. So I want you to use this by doing 3 things. I want you to, 1, open a knowledge gap. Start by raising a question or a mystery. Number 2, I want you to promise a resolution. Hint at the answer. Give that little hint. And number 3, I want you to create a meaningful delay before closing the loop. Okay? Think about how the best podcasts use this between segments. They don't just say, after the break, I'll share the 3rd technique. They say, after the break, I'll share the counterintuitive approach that completely transforms how this works, the one most experts miss entirely. That builds your curiosity. It's going to make you want to stay and find out what that one transformation is, right? And then finally, there's the contrast framework. I want you to establish, and again, we're doing this in 3s today, right? We got our triangles going. So number 1, establish the familiar reality. This is what everybody assumes about it, right? This is the contrast framework. You're going to establish a familiar reality. Everyone assumes this thing about that thing. Then I want you to, number 2, introduce a surprising alternative, which is your insight. And number 3, I want you to bridge the gap. How do you move from one to the other? That is your unique perspective. Remember, you're going to talk about how you bridge that gap. This structure works brilliantly for introducing new concepts because it grounds them in what listeners already understand before expanding their perspective, right? So take a moment now to consider your next episode. Which of these frameworks might serve your content best? The transformation triangle for personal stories, the curiosity loop for maintaining engagement, or the contrast framework for introducing new ideas. Now, I want to help you find some stories within your expertise, because when you're learning this new thing, you might get overwhelmed and think, okay, I can't think of anything. What stories do I have? I hear this all the time from experts, but I don't have any interesting stories, especially in these technical or specialized fields. Let me tell you right now, that is never true. Never, ever, never, never. Taylor Swift, never, ever. The issue isn't a lack of stories. It's knowing how to recognize and extract them from your experience. Now, let me share 4 story mining techniques that work for any expertise. I'm sorry, it's not a 3 this time. It's a 4. That's okay. We'll be fine. So first is the mistake method. Some of your most powerful stories come from moments when you got it wrong. The financial advisor sharing how they mismanaged their first investment, and that teaches more memorably than any theoretical explanation of market principles. It's okay to be human. It's okay to say that you made a mistake. It's okay to learn from that mistake and then tell people and teach people how you learn from that mistake. So I want you to ask yourself, what mistakes have I made in my field? What did they teach me that conventional wisdom doesn't capture, right? You learn more. I used to tell this to my students all the time because I really feel like in our culture, in the U.S. culture, I've taught in Sweden and I've taught here. So in the U.S. culture, I feel like that we teach to the test too much. We have ingrained, and here I'm going to go off on my own little tangent, but that's okay. We're all here for it. We have ingrained our students to fear the test, right? Teach it. They take the test. They either pass or they fail. We've lost the ability to fail safely. And I used to tell this to my students all the time, that if I see you trying, I will bend over freaking backwards to help you figure it out. I just want to see you try. I want to see you fail some. That doesn't mean you're going to fail the class or fail the grade or lose your scholarship. Those aren't the stakes. The stakes are, I want you to fail and then learn from that failure and then conquer it, right? I want you to learn from your mistakes. It is okay. We don't have to fear them as much as we currently do. And I think we've trained people to that, and it sucks. And I hate that. Okay. I'm going to step off my soapbox now and give you the second one. The second one is the question trail. I want you to think about the questions clients or colleagues have repeatedly asked you. Each question likely has a story behind why you know the answer. You journal this, right? Start free writing all of the questions that you've gotten. So let me give you an example. If you're often asked, how do you stay consistent with content creation? There's probably a pivotal moment when you cracked that code for yourself or you wouldn't be consistent. maybe a system you developed after a period of struggle. That's your story, right? Okay, so third is the everyday epiphanies approach. That is the moment when your expertise shows up in unexpected places, like your own home life, right? We don't often look for our work in our home life. So you could see an example like this in an organizational psychologist who realized that her family dinner conflict perfectly illustrated team dynamics, or the fitness coach who found workout motivation principles in his own garden. These connections feel fresh because they're translating expertise into relatable experiences that your audience already understands. And finally, there's the client journey method. Now, I want to say something. Do not call out your clients by names unless they have specifically given informed consent, right? Give them appropriate anonymity. And that does not mean just change their name. That means change details. Okay, so with appropriate anonymity, the before and the after stories of those you've helped contain powerful narratives. They demonstrate your expertise in action while centering the listener's potential transformation. So let's practice this together, okay? This was all high level. Let's practice this together. Think about your podcast topic. Using one of those methods, what story emerges that you haven't told yet? The story that you just identified, that is gold for your next episode. And I guarantee you have dozens more waiting to be discovered with these mining techniques. Now I want to give you our fearless moment, which is a new segment we're trying this season, where we confront a common fear that is holding you, our podcasters, back. So today's fear, vulnerability and storytelling. That worry that sharing personal stories means exposing too much or appearing unprofessional, right? Okay, so let me give you a story about this. Day before yesterday, I got a really exciting opportunity to speak on a stage just already on this Saturday, which is terrifying because that means I need to write a speech and learn the speech in like 3 days. Okay, it's exciting. It's a great opportunity. It's something I'm passionate about. Very short timeline. So I called my best good friend. She is actually the host of the Compassionate Newsroom. She's amazing. And she helped me take that imposter syndrome and stuff it back where it doesn't belong, right? So first of all, you need to get yourself some friends like that. You need to get yourself some friends that you can call and say, hey, these are my feelings. I feel this way right now. Can you help me sort them out? And just talk about them, like talk and say, okay, I'm feeling that I would not be good at this for this reason. And she was like, well, that's dumb. And this is my reason why that's dumb. It was so helpful. I went home and I wrote my script and I'm really happy with the script. And now I'm learning the script. It's okay to have imposter syndrome. It is okay to feel vulnerable. It is not okay to be stuck in those feelings and stay there, right? So vulnerability, that is today's fear. Vulnerability and storytelling. You're not going to be too much. You're not going to be unprofessional. So let me throw you some truth behind that. Controlled vulnerability is not a liability in podcasting. It's an asset. Research shows that leaders who share appropriate struggles are perceived as more authentic and trustworthy, not less competent. And you know why? Because you're not faking it. You're not faking it. Everyone from the tippity-toppity CEO to the just starting out, just finished university, they all have that. They all feel, who the hell let me get this degree, start this job, do this thing? Who put me in charge of this? Everyone feels it, right? It doesn't make you less than, it makes you authentic. Now, saying that, I'm not saying stay stuck in that. I'm saying honor it, feel it, and then move forward with it, right? And that helps with having friends that you can talk to about it. If you don't have anyone you can talk to about it, journal about it, write about it, talk about it on your podcast. There are different ways to move through that, but it will give you authenticity, right? Because you're not being fake. So before you do that though, I want you to ask yourself 3 filtering questions before sharing. Does this story illuminate something meaningful about my topic? Or does the vulnerability serve the listener's journey and not just my catharsis? Having said that, the internet is not your therapist. There are a lot of mean trolls out there, right? There are a lot of mean trolls out there. So does my being vulnerable in this serve the listener's journey, not just my catharsis? And have I processed this experience enough to share it with a perspective, right? So if you are in the middle of processing it, you may not have moved out of it to be able to have the experience to then share it with your audience. Okay. When the answer to all 3 of those is yes, you have found your sweet spot of storytelling vulnerability. So remember, Your audience does not want a perfect narrator. God, how boring. They want a reliable guide who's walked through the challenges and emerged with wisdom to share. Your occasional, I don't know what to do next moments create space for listeners to admit their own uncertainty. And that's precisely when real learning happens. The most fearless thing you can do as a podcaster is not to pretend to have all the answers. We do not have all the answers. It's showing the messy, authentic journey of finding them. Your expertise makes you credible, but your stories make you unforgettable. So your homework before our next episode is to select one of the storytelling frameworks we discussed and apply it to an upcoming episode. So next week, we are going to build on this foundation as we explore audience clarity, which is building your listener avatar, because knowing exactly who you're speaking to makes your stories even more powerful. Until then, I want you to remember that your stories are not just nice additions to your content. They're the vehicle that carries your message into hearts and minds where it can truly make a difference. I am Dr. Stephanie Dean from Fearless Podcasting Academy. Thank you for continuing this journey towards your fearless voice.